It is Monday, January 12th, and this is the first regularly scheduled Finance Committee meeting of the new year. Welcome, everybody. At the start of the meeting, I am joined by, just going ward by ward, Councillor Mickley from Ward 2, Councillor Malachy from Ward 3, Councillor Krinsman from Ward 4, Councillor Charm from Ward 5, Councillor Bixby, our new Vice Chair of the committee from Ward 6, myself from Ward 7, and Councillor Silber from Ward 8. And I just saw Councillor Greenberg from Ward 1 join us as well. I want to make sure everybody knows the members of the administrative staff who are on here as well. We have our CFO, Maureen Lemieux, our new COO, Josh Morse. We have our clerk of this committee, as well as an additional committee, Ms. Pinnell. And we have our comptroller, Steve Curley. So Steve, members of the committee should know, is one of the two appointments. The comptroller's position is one of two appointments that the city council is empowered to make. And he is a wonderful resource. I mean, all of the members of the administrative staff and all who work at City Hall are wonderful resources. But Steve is particularly an excellent resource to the council. And if you ever have questions, even if you think it's a dumb question, they say there's no such thing, and there really isn't, particularly when it comes to city finances. There are a lot of complex concepts and things that come up. And 8 years into this, sometimes Miss Lemieux is still reminding me of things that I should have remembered from having heard them before. So, don't ever feel that you can't ask, certainly in this forum. And if you ever want to ask offline, Steve Curley is absolutely a wonderful first resource. And of course, you could always ask Miss Lemieux as well for the 6 months that we still have her. And I highly encourage you all to learn as much from her as you can before she goes out the door. That said, we only have one item before us tonight. That is 24-26, which is the mayor requesting authorization to transfer $300,000 to fund new positions in the mayor's office. I assume Miss Lemieux and Mr. Morse, you are going to kick us off on that.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will kick us off, and then, of course, we have Mr. Morse here to answer any questions in addition to what you may want to ask me. If I can start by saying, first of all, Madam Chair, it is lovely to be working with you again as the Chair of Finance. I look forward to our time working together. Councillor Bixby, I've got to find you on my screen. I am looking forward to working with you as the Vice Chair. For the returning members of Finance, I believe it is Councillors Greenberg, Malachy, and Mickley, in addition to our Chair and Vice Chair. And so again, I look forward to working with all of you. Councillor Krinsman, I don't think in my 16 years at the city, you have been on Finance. So I'm sure you will bring a bit of brevity to some of our boring conversations. And then for our two new councillors who are new to the council and new to Finance, Councillor, so I heard Councillor Grossman refer to you as Councillor Charm and Councillor Silber. I am happy to meet you virtually and look forward to meeting you, each of you, sometime in person in the not too distant future. All of that being said, we're happy to be here. For those of you who were part of Finance last term, and I think there are 5 of you all together, we spent quite a bit of time on December 8th with the then mayor-elect and now Mayor Laredo talking about his vision for the administration. I don't know if Councilor Silber and Charm, if you even knew that you were going to be on Finance, and so whether or not you understood that this would be one of the first items in front of you. As Councillor Grossman said, there are no silly questions. What we do here is complicated. It is not rocket science, but it's complicated. And there are many, many, many moving pieces. So certainly myself and Josh Morse, we encourage you to ask any questions that you might have. The mayor we had a lengthy conversation on December 8th. In your packets, you have the letter from the mayor detailing what our two new positions, so the chief of staff and the chief of community services, are the two positions that are new. So my position is CFO, Josh Morse is COO. Our positions are not new. They've been around for 100 years, maybe not 100, but a long time. In addition to that, what we're asking for is funding to allow me to retire in about 6 months, for us to be able to search for and bring on a new CFO before I go, so that we can have some time for an overlap between my tenure and when the new CFO would take over. That's what the $300,000 will cover. The source of the funds, we're asking to take the money from 3 different departments. Our city clerk's office, in the elections portion of the city clerk's office, we did not have, we only had 1 election this year. We budgeted for 2. So we have $100,000 savings in poll workers and work from the other departments that have to move all of the equipment, and police officers and everything else that we need to do to staff up an election. So that $100,000 absolutely will not be spent this year. The next $100,000 we're requesting is from Human Resources. They have had several vacancies during this past year. Even if they were to fill them now, they've actually done well getting closer back up to speed, but they still have 2 vacancies. Overall, they will end up with at least $100,000 worth of savings from attrition. And then the third area is from Public Works. We have done a pretty good job over the last few years of keeping our Public Works laborers well staffed. People think that because we have people who work in the street department, that we are doing potholes and sidewalks and maybe like smaller paving or crack sealing or whatever we may be doing. The interesting item is that it is most important that we are staffed up for the winter, because we really rely on our Teamsters in the street department to do a lot of our plowing. So we work very hard to keep those departments staffed as best we can. However, it's always difficult to fill those positions. And so we know for a fact that we will have well over $100,000 that will not be expended in public work. So those are the 3 places. We didn't want to ask to take money from free cash or even budget reserve. We wanted to repurpose funds that had already been budgeted this year for salaries for these couple of positions. With that, I will stop. I think you saw the fabulous memo in your packets from Josh Morse, who is our new COO. I don't know if Josh wants to add anything, but once he's finished, we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Mr. Morse?
Thank you. So I don't, where this is the only item on the agenda, and I'm sure with a relatively brief backup, most of you probably had an opportunity to look through the memo. So I'll try not to repeat myself too much, and of course we can get into it further during Q&A. But so I have worked for the city for 18 years. I spent a lot of time in the executive office. I actually have been sitting there for close to 5 years now. When the pandemic hit, it timed out at the same time all our projects went into construction. So all of my staff were decentralized, independent of the pandemic. They're out at job sites. And we were moving so much paperwork through City Hall that it was just more efficient, and City Hall was more centrally located, for me to just sit there. And so I spent a lot of time sitting in that office. So I got to see it firsthand. But even long before then, I've worked closely with City Hall, with the executive office for many, many years. I've always found it interesting that, we have the chief financial officer in Maureen Lemieux and of course her predecessors, really focused on, not surprisingly, the city's finances and supporting the financial departments. But outside of that, there was a single person, whether it was Bob Rooney or Sandy Pooler or Dory Zalesnik or Jonathan Yo. It was always one single person managing all of the departments, supporting all of our city councilors, supporting 88,000 residents and 13 villages. It's just an enormous amount of work. And I saw firsthand the toll that it took, both personally and professionally, on our COOs over the years. There were so many things that those incredible employees wanted to accomplish, but just struggled to even get away from their desk because they were triple, quadruple booked every hour of the day. And I think one of the things that really excites me about this opportunity is that we're going to have the staff in the executive office to be able to adequately support our department heads, our city councilors, and our community. But it also, and this is really important to me, it will give us an opportunity to get out of City Hall more and get out and meet with the community and meet with businesses, meet with our frontline staff. Just this morning, we were over at DPW meeting with all of the utilities and highway staff. We've been doing meets with the Newton Police Department at roll call. These are opportunities to really discuss, what we can do as a city to help improve, whether it be working conditions or just make sure that we're adequately supporting, maximizing efficiencies with our frontline staff, conveying them, the message, how much we support them and how much we really appreciate the work that they do, and really listening to them. I think one of the things that has made me successful in my career with Newton is the fact that I have remained I've tried really hard to stay in touch with our community and communicate with them often and go see them where they are, and help try to solve problems out in the community. And I think with these moves, it's going to allow us to do that. And that's a huge thing for me. I think this is a paradigm shift for Newton. And as you saw, I did a fair amount of benchmarking, looking at other communities, just trying to make sure that, I didn't want to get super specific because every community is a little different, but I want to make sure that we weren't completely out of touch. And what I found was, if anything, these additional positions are going to put us in line with our peer communities. So I'm happy to answer any and all questions that folks have. But I know I'm very excited about this.
Thank you very much. I know I have a few questions. So members of the committee, if you have questions, if you could raise your virtual hand. What I do is largely recognize people in the order that hands have gone up. And I'm just sort of explaining this for folks who are new to my style of leading a meeting. Whenever Ms. Lemieux or Mr. Morse or another member of the staff kind of flags me down, I tend to interrupt our order to recognize them because I trust that they have some sort of relevant answer or information to add to the discussion. The other thing I will tend to do is, once we've heard from everybody once, if we have some repeat hands and then a new hand comes in the mix, I try to go to the new hand to let that person have a say as well. Another thing to sort of know, there is a tendency in the city council to say, I'd like to make a motion, or I'll move this when the time is right, or when the group is ready. I don't, you can say that. I don't care for that particular style of making motions. In my view, that's not a motion. A motion is, right now, I'd like to move that we approve, or we deny, or we hold, or we whatever. And I will recognize that as a motion on the floor. So if you say to me like, well, when the time is right, I'm going to say, how about now? I encourage you to make the motion sooner. I did come across in a very recent meeting sort of a misunderstanding on that point. So I want to make sure that, that people know that, particularly because occasionally the order in which motions are made can affect the outcome of votes, as you will see over time. So we've got a bunch of hands. Just pull up my participant list. Councillor Krinsman, followed by Councillor Bixby.
Great. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it. I think your rules make sense. I'm going to have to get used to people being recognized in the order in which their hands were raised, but okay, if that's how you want to do it, I guess that makes sense. I'm supportive of this item. Okay, so let me start there. I think it's fortuitous that we have these, reserve funds. It makes sense to shift them over. I guess it's a good thing that our HR department doesn't know how to fill vacancies in HR. But again, this is good. This is going to work for all of us. My question is more about whether what the plans are sort of moving forward, right? When we come to when the mayor files his budget, in March, do you know yet? Are the plans to eliminate those positions, or should we be looking at, given that these funds have shifted, but those positions were open, will new growth first fill those vacancies? Like, should we expect that those positions continue to exist? We just won't need to budget them for 6 months, or how are you sort of thinking about the next budget and these positions that are now being the funds for these positions that are now being shifted out?
If I may, Madam Chair, I think it's a different answer for each department. For the clerk's office, we will need to take a look at how many elections we expect to have. The funds that we're moving are very much a product of what we have for elections. So we will look at that. We will budget accordingly. For human resources, we will absolutely be looking to fill the positions that have been vacated during the course of this year. So those funds will go back to supporting full-time staff. The Department of Public Works is a bit of a question mark, I would say. We have not even started yet. I wanted to wait for the new administration to get in place and to give everybody a couple of weeks to get into their jobs. Typically, I would have started budget meetings before now, but when we have a change in administration, you certainly don't want to start budget meetings without your new team being at the table. So we will definitely, I am sure, we will have conversations about there any positions in Public Works, or how many positions are there in Public Works that historically go unfilled, and that we may want to take that money. Not that we would take it from Public Works, because heavens knows we have more work to do in Public Works than we could possibly fund in the next 5 years. But if the mayor and the commissioner and the COO all think that it's a good idea to not fund a couple of the positions in the street department and instead take that money and repurpose it onto our paving line, I could certainly see that happening. I don't see the money going away from Public Works, but it may not be going to the original intent of what it was budgeted for this year.
Okay. That's helpful. Thank you. One other question, actually, before I ask it, because then I'll stop. I just want to reciprocate and say I'm thrilled to be on this committee and thrilled to be working both with you, Madam Chair, you, COO Morse, and you, CFO Lemieux. I think you all know I'm a big admirer of the way you all work, so I am thrilled. In terms of where this money is coming from and the positions that were looked at, were there other vacancies and these were chosen, or were these the only vacancies that were available so the money could be shifted?
They were a great question. There were other vacancies.
Everyone here, she said great question, and I think she actually meant it that time. I just want folks to be aware of that. Okay, sorry, go ahead.
So great question. And there were other vacancies throughout the city. We wanted to limit the list so that, you could all get your hands around it. And we didn't want to be taking 40 or 50,000 from different departments. We figured this was easier to take 100.
Okay, but it is definitively not an indication that these positions are going away.
Absolutely.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Madam Chair. Appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Bixby, then Councillor Greenberg.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Councillor Krinsman was, touched on a lot of my questions. So I think just some follow-ups to get to the details. So the elections question the statement, we know there will be no more elections this year. That means through the end of this fiscal year, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's how we can know that at this point in time.
Correct.
Got it. All right, I just want to make sure I understood that. And I think, Councillor Krinsman's second point in particular, that this is not a indication that these positions in particular are going away or anything, is helpful for us all to understand. And I think, so I guess this is more of a statement, but going into budget season, it would be helpful since we've had this conversation now, for those of us who have been on finance a couple times now about this position. And, I feel like different positions have been mentioned and all of that. I think it would be helpful for us to have an understanding of if there is more of a decision that some positions are being, thought of in a different way and or I guess we won't say eliminated, who knows, but that shifted around in that way. It would be helpful for us to have some clarity on that as we go into this next piece, since it's been kind of, again, brought up in multiple ways and left a little bit open at this point. So thanks for this. And I'll also say, I think this makes a lot of sense. I'll be really interested to see how it works. But so far, have really appreciated the communication and, statements of accessibility and commitment to that. So thanks.
All set for now, Counselor Pixie? Okay. Counselor Greenberg, then Counselor Charm.
Oh, thank you, Chair. First of all, I want to say I'm really looking forward to working under this new formula administration and these new roles in the administration. And I have a deep admiration for those who were chosen for those roles. So I'm excited to start the new term with these folks. The only question I have is for human resources. Are they working at a detriment right now since they don't have those positions filled? Is it difficult for them to do what they need to do?
If I may, Madam Chair, it always is when you have a smaller department that loses people along the way. You always have a void, which is why we work very hard to try to replace people if they leave, especially in our smaller departments. So I would say, yes, it's always an issue, but we are working hard to find the replacements. We're actually down to only 2 vacancies in human resources now. I think we had 4 at our height, so we've brought at least 2 new people in. And I saw paperwork that I signed off on the other day. We are in the process of trying to make an offer for one of the 2. So we're working very hard to fill those positions.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear. I'm all set, Chair.
Okay, thanks. I'll just add that having had the privilege of serving on a few hiring committees over the last few terms, I've really been amazed at the volume of work that comes through our human resources department, not just in these big hiring processes, but every time we have one, that's a huge undertaking. But we have a very large team of city employees and a lot of really complicated issues that come up, bargaining issues that take years. And I don't know the rest of the team that well. I see Ms. PC O'Brien at work the most, but man, is she working hard. And I did not know we had 4 vacancies at a time. That must have been rough. And it sort of feeds into comments I'll make later, but I'll stop there for now and just say I'm glad we're at least down to 2. I'd love it to be 0. Counselor Charm and then Counselor Silber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a couple questions that related to some that have already come up, so I will just quickly confirm my understanding of things that have happened. So on the clerk vacancies, the vacancies and the lack of another election, we are talking about fiscal years, right? Not calendar years, because I was thinking of the Ward 7 special election for school committee. So I remembered we had 2 during the calendar year 2025.
Yes. So everything that we bring to you will be based on fiscal years. We don't even think in terms of calendar years. So whenever I say this year, I will always be talking about the fiscal year. And I just want to make sure that this point is very clear. In the clerk's office, it's not a vacancy. It's all the poll workers that it takes to staff 34 precincts. So it's 50,000-ish in poll worker salaries for that one day, and then 50,000-ish between the police that we need to deploy, the public works people who move all of the voting equipment, over to all those polling places, bring them all back to City Hall. So it's that labor is what this 100,000 is. It is not any real positions in the clerk's office.
Got it. That's very helpful. Thank you. Also, just a reminder of like, wow, those special elections are expensive for the city.
They are very.
And then my other question was related to like, so my understanding is that these two HR positions that we are taking off the table, at least until the end of the fiscal year, those are positions that would not, basically we're committing to not fill those until the end of this fiscal year. And so that's one, just confirming that that is the case. And then if that is the case, then, you know, what specifically, like, what do we think are the costs of not filling those vacancies? You know, to the point of Councilors Greenberg and Councilor Grossman, you know, what are, like, we know that they're doing a lot of work and that their plates are full. So what is the cost of not actually filling those?
Thank you. I am actually thrilled that you asked that question because I apparently did not make myself clear when I was explaining it, which happens very often. So please always clarify what I have said. We are not taking those positions off the table at all. This request, this $100,000, is money that we have saved up to this point, this fiscal year, in the HR department. We have left money in that budget that if we were successful in bringing people into those two positions for next Monday, we could do that. So we are absolutely not putting those positions on hold. As I said, I signed off. I think it might have just been an offer. I don't know if the person accepted or not. But we are trying to fill it's an HR generalist position is the one that we're close on. I don't know that we have done any interviews yet for the deputy position. It's a higher paid position. It's a little bit more difficult to fill, but we are actively moving forward on each of those. So there is absolutely no intent to be shorting that department. None of these are shorting anything in any of the three departments.
Thanks so much for clarifying.
All set, Councilor Charm? Okay, thanks. Councilor Silber.
Hi, thanks. I'll try to keep this pretty brief because I feel like a lot of great questions have already been asked. I understand the poll worker variable costs associated in the savings without a second election. From a perspective of the police and DPW, are those also overtime expenses that weren't incurred, or are those how are those budgeted as wage or salary allocations?
Thank you. So however the police are paying the people, what we do within the city, and you'll see this when you really dive a little bit more deeply into the budget, we have one line within our salary section that's work for other departments. We have another line in the salary section that's work by other departments. And so in the clerk's office, this 50,000 that we're asking to move is from the line item that's called work by other departments. And so the police incur the expense. The police payroll initially pays the police officers, but then they transfer bill the clerk's office for that police time. So I think it's mostly overtime. I don't think they do this on the detail rate. I think they do this on overtime, but it's work that the police department would have paid out, but then they transfer bill it to the clerk's office.
Got it. Yeah, what I was trying to understand is obviously, you know, if you had a salaried position, that money doesn't magically go away if the person's not doing the work. But if it's overtime, that's obviously a piece that you can repurpose. So, and for the two outstanding HR positions, what are the functional areas that you're working on hiring right now?
So as I said, one is an HR generalist, and I know that we are very deep in the process of interviewing for that position, and they were trying to make an offer the other day. I don't know if that actually settled or not. The deputy position, I don't think we have begun interviews at all yet. I I know they were working on like looking at the description again. I'm not quite even sure if that one has been advertised, but it is actively being looked at, and we will certainly be moving forward with advertising for it and trying to find the best candidate. And so it's an HR generalist who helps the other, mostly really the other HR members of the team, and does a lot of the paperwork and shuffling, if you will. But then the deputy's position is really critical, and we definitely want to get that filled.
Got it. That's great. No more questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Counselor Maliki.
Thanks. So it didn't sound like any of the reductions from this year are going to be something that you would plan on repeating next year. So can you give us any sense of the plan going forward? Where would we actually be making real cuts?
Councilor Maliki, great question. But as I said a few minutes ago, we haven't even started our budget meetings.
Mm-hmm.
We budget very tightly. We budget person by person. We will be analyzing every position again across the municipal departments. If we have positions that we don't think we need to fill, they could certainly be positions that we may choose not to budget for next year. If they are all positions that need to be filled, we have certainly, we believe that the benefits of these two positions that we really have in front of you tonight will far outweigh the cost. We will, when all is said and done, we will have figured out how to balance our budget to within whatever the appropriation is that the mayor thinks is appropriate for the municipal departments. It is really a matter of making the sausage and remaking the sausage and yet making the sausage again. We have almost 4,000 line items in the municipal budget. We go through that budget line by line by line. If I said to you, I go through that 15 times in a budget process, line by line by line, that would not be an exaggeration, and it's probably an underestimate of how often we go through that, trying to tweak little bits of making sure, that we can make adjustments throughout. So we have a very long way to go. We have not even started the budget process.
Okay. Yeah, not questioning the advisability of doing this at all. I'm completely supportive, and I must compliment Josh Morse on that great letter, which it's sort of like a new voice and different style of writing than I'm used to seeing, I think. I'm just sort of very conscious of the to take one topic on everybody's mind is fixing the website and making it more usable, and that funding has to come from somewhere if we can't do it ourselves. And I know I feel like we're feeling the absence of the traffic engineers, still having those 2 traffic engineers vacant as, I don't know, 6 months, 9 months, it seems like ages now. And you have to wonder if some of these positions that we chronically have trouble filling, like the HR ones, are we paying enough, or are working conditions going to be so great under the new administration that we'll keep people? So we'll see what happens, I guess.
So if I may, Madam Chair, I will say that we look at all of that as well, Councilor Maliki, and I actually think I'm pretty certain I signed paperwork within the last day or two for the traffic department. So yeah, I actually think that, and I just saw Josh nod his head, I think that we are close to having a new traffic engineer on board. So, we work hard trying to fill these. There aren't a tremendous number of people who either come out of school or are working in their professional life who say, gee, I want to go and work for municipal government. So it's always a little bit difficult even to get people, if they're not already in government, making that switch from private industry over to municipal work is not always easy because we can't compete with private enterprises. We hope that that the commitment to public service and the benefits that we offer and the pension and a fair salary, not the best salary, but a fair salary. We hope that all of that lures the right people to do the work that we need them to do. But we absolutely look at how long it takes us to fill different positions. You know, is there something different that we need to do to recruit? So we're very much in tune to that.
Thanks. And let me take the opportunity to say how much I appreciate Lisa Pennell and glad she joined us. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. So since there aren't any other hands, I have a couple comments and a couple questions. First, a comment. So this conversation brought to mind for me as we're thinking about what sort of changes or improvements we want to make to our budget process this year. I think it would be really helpful to have a clear list, chart, or at least discussion about any positions that were in the previous budget that you decide not to put forward in the new budget. It's always obvious to see new positions, but it's not always obvious to see positions that were reduced or eliminated. So I think that would be helpful. Then I wanted to essentially start where Councillor Malachy ended, which is about, sort of, are we paying people enough? And where this is in my mind, I recognize that we have lots of different vacancies across the city. And I also recognize that the money that you've identified here that we're going to move is money we are clearly not going to expend in the manner that it was intended to be between now and June 30. However, one difference or wrinkle to this that was not clear when we talked about it in December is that two of the line items are coming from the broader bucket of the clerk's office. And to me, that's a little unfortunate. I'm concerned about our retention of folks in the clerk's office. I think we have 2 vacancies in elections right now. Is that right? You guys can tell me, when you reply to my comment, but the turnover in the office has obviously been a huge concern. Now we have a new clerk who's, I think, going to be absolutely wonderful, and I'm really excited about what's to come, but I am concerned about the salary levels in the office. And at least just anecdotally and seeing when we lose folks, where they're going, it seems to me they're going to other government jobs, not private sector jobs, sometimes state house jobs or other more related nonprofit jobs. And I suppose I feel, a little bit more of a vested interest in advocating for the clerk's office, given that that's the only other place that the city council gets to sort of make an appointment and have a direct say. So that's sort of point one. I don't know if you want to. Yeah,
can I
go ahead.
respond? So thank you, Councilor Grossman. We actually last summer, I don't think it was in time for the budget process. I can't remember now. Time goes so quickly, but we actually did a significant analysis of the clerk's office, and we adjusted the pay of several of the members. There has been turnover there, but they had their city clerk who left, and whenever the leader of a department leaves, invariably you have a person or two who may want to leave also. We have a new clerk. When someone new comes in to lead, you might have people who want to leave. We have very much been in transition, I would say, since our former clerk, David Olson, left. So that is now probably 3 to 4 years. And sometimes it takes that long for a department to get back on track. But we did look very closely at the salaries. We adjusted, I want to say we have 7 union positions in that department. I think we adjusted 5 of the 7. And so it was certainly sweeping change. We did not adjust anyone who is an H grade who works on the clerk of the council side. So the committee clerks that you all work with, we did not adjust those because we actually have just completed a classification and compensation study that we hired the Collins Center to do for us. We're waiting to really see what that says and to understand what their recommendations are. And so the 8th grade portion of the department is yet to be addressed, but the union side of the department, we did make significant changes last summer. So we understand exactly what you're saying.
I very much appreciate that. And I know this is not an issue that's just limited to the clerk's office. It's obviously an across the board issue. Clearly, given the questions and answers we've had about the Human Resources Department and others. And I know as a new administration, it's something that you will all really continue to dive into to understand of how we can keep people and when folks choose to move on, what really is the driver of that reason. But it is something that I'm keeping my eye on, and I don't like giving away resources from the clerk's office. So that's really something that I felt I needed to share. The second thing is a question, which is really the only sort of skepticism that I heard about dividing the job the job of the COO. When we met in December was, is there enough to do? I fully believe there's enough to do. I mean, I've only worked with Mr. Yo, so but that one example was enough to convince me. I mean, I know there's more work than two human beings could possibly do. My question is, how are you going to measure and evaluate sort of the effectiveness of adding a second position where there was one? And secondly, if the balance of assignments between the different departments is right. And if I had been sitting down dividing up the departments, I'm not sure I would have landed in the same division. And obviously, we're also talking about two really experienced people with different sections of the city. So I'm sure that played into it. But given that this is new, and I think we will look back as the next year or two go by to look at the effectiveness, how do you plan to evaluate, measure, and come to a conclusion on that?
So I will just jump in first, and then I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Morse. But I think you are correct. You've watched Bob Rooney over the years. You watched Jonathan Yo. There is enough work there, I can assure you, for three people to be doing, because what has happened up to this point is for each of these fabulous people who have held that position, there's only 24 hours in a day. And we can all work 7 days a week, which we actually do in that department, and work almost every waking moment. And you still can't get to all of the departments who need your mentorship. We have, as Josh said in his memo, I thought it was fabulous. We only have, was it one department head who's been here in his position for 10 years? Yep. We have 21 department heads. We really need to be able to each spend time mentoring, transferring that institutional knowledge to all these different department heads, helping them make sure that they're really accomplishing everything that all of you want us to do, that you think that you've approved during a budget cycle. We want to make sure that we are helping everybody have the resources they need and accomplish what it is that we all came to you in the spring and said that we were going to do. I'm going to stop because I could go on for half an hour about how important these positions are, but I'm going to turn it over to Josh so that he can talk about really the division, especially between himself and John Rice. I think, that's clearly really important for you all to understand.
Thank you. So I'll get to that in one sec. I want to hit on the accountability thing first, because that's a big one for me. Coming from an infrastructure background, it's very easy to measure accountability. I think that the measure of success of these positions is really going to be something that we can analyze with our departments. Our budget process has goals and objectives and accomplishments. And we'll actually, you're going to be seeing a fresh new look of our budget coming soon, a little big market tease there, but those key core elements are going to be maintained. So the department split, the departments that each of us have, the success of those departments are going to be a byproduct of our support and mentorship for those department heads. So if Public Works is successful in meeting their outcomes and objectives, That is, of course, a collective effort of Public Works. It would not take that away from them. But I would also like to think that with my support, it would also be a measure of my success. For John Rice, if Health and Human Services is knocking things out of the park, I think it's a measure of his success. If we haven't met all of our accomplishments or goals and objectives, that's where maybe we need to focus a little more attention. With respect to the actual split, I think it's important to recognize that it's, I look at it from a project management standpoint because that's my background. It's always important to have somebody who is the project manager or the person in charge or the person who is supporting a particular department, because you need that accountability stream. At the same time, the reality is that our departments are not homogeneous. There are elements of every department that may align really well to my strengths or to John's strengths, for example. The Parks and Recreation Department is a great example. They have their own, kind of infrastructure project management, parks. I'm going to be working I worked a lot with Carol Shine, and then a lot with Louise, and I'm working a lot with Aaron. And that will continue despite the fact that John Rice is providing that direct support to Parks and Rec. At the same time, with John really being focused on community life and those community programming things, there's a lot of interface with our harder departments as well. For example, the Cooper Center just opened. The programs are intertwined with the infrastructure itself. So public buildings needs to be involved in that. Transportation for parking plans needs to be involved in that. So there's so many things where, while we have our departments that we are ultimately accountable for and that we're going to be providing that support, there are going to be lots of opportunities for us to support each other between John and I to make sure that we are providing the best possible oversight and support we can for each of our departments.
Thank you. And is there like a defined period of time that you'll take a look back and assess whether the split of departments is, should remain going forward as it will be today?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think there's a natural point to evaluate that as part of the budget process. I also think that, and I said this in the letter, and Maureen alluded to it as well. We have a young department head team. There's a lot of mentoring we need to do. The other thing I think that is really important, and we've talked a lot about this, the mayor has as well, as we started to meet with our departments, is that it's not just supporting our department heads, it's supporting really their number twos to make sure that we have good succession planning, and the entire staff, because we want the whole staff to be able to grow. If we're not growing our team from within, you get more transfers to other municipalities. If people see that upward mobility and that support, they're more likely to stick around, and it's better for us because it makes us more resilient as a city. So I think the budget cycle is certainly an opportunity. I also think that right now we're trying to get through a transition. This is a bit of a paradigm shift. It's a growth period, more of an institutional growth, not necessarily budget growth. But I think when water finds its level with all the various departments, and as department heads settle in, we'll get a good sense as to workloads and where it makes the most sense. And if we need to tweak things, we'll work together. We'll make things happen.
Okay, thank you. And then the last thing I just want to share is more of a comment, and I brought it up in December and want to make sure to state it again, which is that I'm absolutely going to support this and vote for it. And I'm really excited about the individuals that you're putting in various roles. And I am really looking forward to working with those folks. Attention for me is some of the very contentious conversations we have had over the last 2 to 3 years around our school budget. And this sort of ongoing notion that there's not another spare penny to be had anywhere to support our schools or prevent getting rid of a program or laying off teachers or what have you. And I just sort of want to point out that I think there's a solid chance, depending on how things go, that And it's not just the case in the schools. It could be the case in other departments. We know everybody could use triple the resources that they have at least and more. I think it's a very easy thing to point out, like, hey, you're telling me we can't have more grass seed for the parks. You're telling me we have to get rid of the orchestra program, but we just added positions to the mayor's office. And it could be me making the point. So I want to be upfront and put that up there because it's always hard when we decide to allocate and spend money somewhere, knowing that there are going to be other tough issues to come down the line.
So if I, Madam Chair, can jump in first, I saw Josh raise his hand, but I want to beat him to the punch. I can assure you that doing the best that we can for the Newton Public Schools is absolutely a top priority for this mayor. I don't want anyone to think that we are adding positions in the mayor's office willy-nilly and not worrying about where those funds are coming from. We will do that within whatever it is that we think is appropriate for the municipal side, and it will not impact our commitment to the Newton Public Schools. I want to categorically say that for you.
Mr. Morse?
And I will just add, so I want to, first of all, I want to give credit to Maureen. And this was the reason why I raised my hand. I want to jump in first because I know that you will not take credit where credit is due. Maureen, so this winter and this spring, you are going to see a very different budget process. You're going to see a very different model of working collaboratively and transparently with the city council, the school committee, the school department, and our community. This past spring was tough. It was hard. We are going to have a very different process that will play out this winter and this spring. The mayor and Maureen and the team have already had meetings with school leadership and school committee leadership. We have set the stage for a much more collaborative, team-focused, forward-thinking relationship with respect to budgeting for Newton Public Schools. Maureen has already met with Liam Hurley. They're rolling up their sleeves and working hard to make sure that we're planning not only for this budget cycle, but for the future. There are going to be opportunities, and we're looking forward to putting all of that on the table in a very different format and with a very different feel with respect to how we work with the city council coming this winter and this spring. So I know I'm not giving specifics, but that's because we haven't gotten far enough into it. But our commitment to you is that this is going to feel a lot better this winter and this spring as we move forward with the budget process.
That sounds good to me. So thank you very much. I really appreciate the candid conversation with you both. And at this time, we don't have any other hands. So is there a motion? Councilor Krinsman.
Happy to move approval and want to just echo your comments about the candid conversation as well as all of the commitments that we've heard that are applicable to sort of the next few months and going into the next budget process. Appreciate all of them. So happy to move approval.
Okay, we have a motion to approve by Councilor Krinsman. Councilor Charm.
I was going to second.
Oh, thank you. In committee, we actually don't need a second, and before the full council, we do. But I'm happy to have it. You will
adding
some
my
people,
enthusiasm.
some people do them anyway. I actually think that one of the points of, or sort of one of the requests I've made to our new clerk is that I actually think that all of us, and chairs especially, could use some real clarity on some of those rules and some of the Roberts rules so that we're more consistent committee to committee. But technically speaking, when you're in the committee format, you don't need one. So we have a motion to approve by Councilor Krinsman. Is there any further discussion before we vote? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. We have unanimous approval. So that concludes our business for tonight. I just wanted to point out quickly our next meeting 2 weeks from now, I'm intending to hold as a hybrid meeting. The Finance Committee's been virtual for at least 3 terms. I think at least 3 at this point. And I'm interested in experimenting, particularly with the model that Programs and Services adopted in the last term of having some meetings in person and some all virtual. I totally expect that city staff will often opt, if not always opt, to be virtual. That's I totally understand why, and I think that's as I said, understandable. I'm just interested to see how we do in person. I feel like the relationships among counselors can be sort of stronger, warmer, and better in person. And when members of our city staff are available to be in person, and I know that it's hard to wait around all day and wait around for your item. I've just realized over time that there are some department heads I interact with that I've never met in person. Or see in person and think, wow, like I haven't seen you in 5 years. So along those lines, I'd like to try the next one in person. And then I was thinking, depending on how full our agenda is, if we have time at the conclusion of that meeting, I would just love to have a discussion about it with all of you to get your feedback on what works well for you and what preferences you have. No hard and fast rules here. I'm just trying to figure out what works best for the group. And with that, we're adjourned at 7:57. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you all.